It started like a normal day in court. The room was full of people sitting quietly, waiting for the judge to enter. But nobody knew what was coming. The moment Judge Andrew Napolitano walked in, the air changed. He looked at everyone with that serious face he always had. He was known as a man who loved control more than anything. Former Fox News analyst, now a judge who believed the courtroom belonged only to him. He didn't like loud voices, he didn't like strong opinions, and he definitely didn't like being challenged. But that day, someone was ready to challenge him. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was sitting there, calm but confident. She was not just another person in court. She was a fighter, a woman who spoke up for people who were ignored. Jasmine didn't fear authority. She had faced tougher battles before. She had been called names, threatened, insulted, but she never backed down. She believed in truth, even if it made powerful people angry. Judge Napolitano looked at her like she was already guilty of something. One small comment from her, not even a shout, and he exploded. He slammed the desk and accused her of being disrespectful. Then, without warning, he fined her $1,000 right there in front of everyone. The whole room went silent. People began whispering. Some pulled out their phones to record what was happening. You could feel the tension in the air. Something big was about to happen. But this was not the end. It was only the beginning. This was not just about a fine. This was about power, ego, and pride. And the judge had no idea that he had just lit a fire. Jasmine's next move would shock everyone and turn the entire courtroom upside down. The same judge who tried to shame her would soon be the one who felt shame himself. Stay to the end, because what Jasmine does next makes the judge wish he had never tried to silence her. The courtroom that had been silent now felt like a battlefield. Judge Napolitano sat higher than everyone else, looking down with cold eyes, pretending he owned the entire space. Jasmine Crockett stood up, not with anger, but with calm fire in her voice. She tried to explain why she raised her voice earlier, how she felt the judge was acting unfairly and cutting her off. But before she could even finish her sentence, the judge interrupted her again, slamming his hand on the desk and accusing her of speaking out of turn. The crowd shifted in their seats. It wasn't just a legal fight now, it felt personal. Napolitano's voice grew louder. He called her disruptive, and said she was mocking the court. He made it sound like she was some child who needed punishment. In front of everyone, he announced once again that she was being fined $1,000 and warned that any more talkback would lead to more punishment, maybe even jail. Most people expected Jasmine to apologize or stay quiet. Instead, she looked straight at him and said softly, "You're not angry because I broke a rule. You're angry because I won't bow to you." Gasps filled the room. The judge's face turned red. Lawyers and staff exchanged glances. Some people in the back started whispering, "She's right." Reporters scribbled faster. Phones were suddenly being held up, recording everything. Everyone felt the pressure building like a storm. Jasmine started speaking about how powerful people use rules and fines to silence real voices, especially the voices of women, and especially women of color. She said this wasn't justice, this was humiliation. She said, "You don't want order, you want obedience." It hit hard. Even people who usually stayed quiet were nodding. Judge Napolitano threatened her again. He shouted that if she continued, she would be held in contempt of court, which could mean jail time. Jasmine straightened her back and said she didn't care. "I'd rather face jail than let you bully me," she said. Phones captured every second. Social media started to react in real time. Hashtags about her began trending. Messages of support started flooding in from people outside who were watching the livestream. The judge started losing control over the room. Every time he spoke, it sounded less powerful. Every time Jasmine responded, her voice got stronger. She told a personal story about women like her facing threats, discrimination, and still showing up every day to defend people who are ignored. She said that the real disrespect was not her tone but the judge's ego. He tried to interrupt again, but this time, many people in the room sighed loudly, almost in protest. It was turning into a public revolt. Even the security guards hesitated, unsure if they should follow the judge's orders if he told them to remove her. They knew all eyes were watching. The confrontation kept growing. The judge tried to throw another punishment, threatening to remove her from the courtroom and double the fine. But Jasmine didn't move, didn't blink. She said, "Your threats don't scare me. Your title doesn't scare me." Her voice filled the entire space, stronger than any gavel strike. One woman in the crowd even whispered, "That's real courage." At this point, it was clear, Jasmine wasn't just fighting a fine. She was fighting a system of humiliation. The judge kept going, but every word he said made him look smaller. Jasmine stood there, surrounded by a silent army of people quietly supporting her. The judge realized he was losing control of the narrative. He wanted to show power, but instead, he looked like a man trying to break a woman's voice out of pure pride. That was the moment the conflict reached its breaking point. No turning back. The fight was no longer just about money. It was about dignity, respect, and who truly had the moral upper hand. The judge's anger turned into panic. His voice, which once controlled the room, started to crack. He finally shouted for security to remove Jasmine Crockett. 2 guards stepped forward, but even they paused as they saw the look on her face. Jasmine didn't step back. Instead, she stood even taller and raised her voice so every single person could hear. She said, "This fine doesn't scare me. Throw me out if you want. But remember this moment forever. Because today, you exposed your own fear." The room froze. No one moved, not the guards, not the lawyers, not even the reporters. Jasmine slowly took the paper that said, $1,000 fine, and held it up. The judge stared in shock. Then she tore it right in half, right in front of him. The sound of the paper ripping echoed through the courtroom louder than any gavel. A woman in the back gasped. Someone else whispered, "She really did it." The judge's eyes widened. All his power suddenly looked weak in front of that one act. Jasmine pointed at him and called out every injustice she had faced. She said this courtroom was not a place of law, but a place where pride and ego sat in the judge's chair. She reminded everyone that Napolitano had once defended people in power on television while ignoring the pain of regular people. Every word stabbed deeper. Reporters captured every second. Phones recorded every line. It felt like the whole country was watching live. The judge tried to speak again, but his words were broken and shaky. He yelled, "You're in contempt." But nobody cared anymore. The authority he had tried to enforce was gone. Even the security guards looked unsure. They looked at each other, then back at the judge, waiting. Not even they wanted to touch Jasmine now because they knew the world was watching. People in the courtroom started standing up, one by one, in silent agreement with her. Some even nodded to her as a sign of respect. Jasmine walked forward, not away. She didn't run or hide. She walked closer to the judge with calm power in her eyes. She told him directly, "You didn't find me because of disrespect. You fined me because you couldn't control me." The judge had no answer. His hands were shaking. His mouth opened but nothing came out. One reporter whispered to another, "He's finished." At that moment you could feel the entire energy in the room changing. The judge, once feared, now looked like a man trapped in embarrassment. Jasmine, the one he tried to shame, had become the strongest voice in the room. She took back her power without using a single curse word or scream. Just truth and courage. The judge realized removing her would turn him into a villain in the eyes of millions. He sat back in his chair, defeated, staring as Jasmine walked toward the exit. She didn't storm out. She walked out slowly, head high, shoulders straight, and everyone watched her, not him. As she walked out, people followed her with their eyes, almost forgetting the judge still existed. The whole courtroom stood in quiet shock. Jasmine didn't win with violence, she won with dignity. In one powerful moment, she flipped the entire courtroom and left Judge Napolitano in total regret, unable to stop her or erase what had just happened. That moment was the peak, the climax, where power was taken from the judge and handed to the woman he tried to silence. The courtroom was left in complete silence after Jasmine walked out. Judge Napolitano sat there, frozen, as if he didn't know what to do next. His gavel was on the desk, but he didn't even touch it. The people in the room slowly started talking, but this time, their words were against him. Some shook their heads in disbelief at what he had tried to do. Others stepped outside to call their friends, telling them what they just witnessed. The judge's attempt to control a woman in front of the world had failed, and news of it started spreading like wildfire. Within just a few hours, social media was exploding. Clips of Jasmine tearing the fine paper were everywhere. Hashtags like #StandWithJasmine, #CourtroomCourage, and #JudgeExposed were trending. Celebrities, lawyers, and regular citizens posted messages supporting her bravery. Even people who had never heard of Jasmine Crockett were now treating her like a hero. News channels picked up the story, calling it one of the boldest courtroom moments in years. Some anchors questioned whether the judge had violated legal boundaries. Others pointed out the symbolism of a woman refusing to be punished into silence. Judge Napolitano faced immediate backlash. People dug up past interviews where he had acted arrogantly or defended unfair policies. His image as a strong, respected judge began to crumble. There were demands for him to be investigated for bias and abuse of power. Some groups even started calling for his resignation. Meanwhile, Jasmine gave a short public statement. She said she stood up not just for herself, but for every person who has ever been disrespected for speaking truth. She said she would not pay the $1,000 fine because it represented something bigger, a system that tries to shame voices instead of listening to them. Instead, she announced she would donate $1,000 to a charity that helps young girls become leaders and speakers. That one decision made the public love her even more. People began sharing stories of how Jasmine had inspired them. Young girls across the country posted videos saying they wanted to be fearless like her. Teachers showed clips of her speech in classrooms to teach about standing up for justice. Jasmine was invited on interviews, podcasts, and talk shows. In every appearance, she spoke calmly about the need to challenge ego and power in positions of authority. She never used hate, she never attacked personally, she just stood strong. That impressed people even more. Judge Napolitano, on the other hand, had to stay quiet. Every time he tried to defend himself, people laughed at him online. They shared screenshots of him looking confused and defeated in court. Even some supporters of the judge started to back away, saying he had gone too far. The court system received formal complaints. Some legal experts said the way he handled that hearing could lead to a disciplinary review. His reputation, which once looked untouchable, was now cracked open in front of the nation. What started as him trying to punish Jasmine had turned into a story of his own downfall. In the end, Jasmine didn't just walk out of that courtroom, she walked into history. She became a symbol of courage and dignity. The $1,000 fine became worthless. The judge's power seemed empty. And people everywhere learned a lesson: true authority comes from respect, not from fear. The situation reminded everyone that sometimes one bold moment can shake an entire system. The resolution of the story proves one thing: when someone stands up with truth, not even a courtroom judge can stop that power. Napolitano tried to embarrass her, but he ended up embarrassing himself. Jasmine walked away stronger, and the judge was left in regret. That is how the story ended, not with shame on her, but with shame on him.